Hey everybody, welcome back to another Mr. Oldenburg's math lesson. Today we're going to make line plots because yesterday we learned how to read them, so now we're going to make them. A lot going on here, guys. First of all, yesterday we talked about how much I hate data tables because data tables are unorganized. They're not neat and clean. So we have to make sure that we organize our data first. Neatness and organization are the key to doing any kind of math right. So it says a 5th grade class recorded the height of each student. How can you organize the data? And they want you to make a line plot. But before I go and make a line plot, I'm going to take this data table and I'm going to create a frequency table because I want to know the amount of times something is happening. So, just like yesterday, I'm going to start with my least value, go to my next least value, all the way to my greatest, so that way I can have my information organized so I can chart it correctly. So I see a 55, I see a 52, I see a 50 and a half. So I got less each time. I see a 50. I do not see anything less than 50. So 50 is my least value. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to take a little walk through this information again. I'm going to find all the 50s. So I see 150, and I would stop. I'd put a single line through it so I could still see it, but I know I used it. I'm going to put a tally in the frequency table. Then I'm going to continue. I might even start back at the beginning of the line, right? Look for any other 50s. No. There's one. Single line, tally, and then finish it up. Start again. No more. So you would go through the entire chart like this, one at a time, find one, strike it, tally. To speed this up a little bit, I'm just going to count them out and do it. So, again, I would start again. What's my least value? Well, I got 50 and a half. Nothing less than 50 and a half. So my next value, 50 and a half. Now I'm going to go through and find all my 50 and a halves. Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My next value, well, I got a 52. Oop, 52's next. So here we go. 52's 1, 2. And start again. 55. Nothing less than a 55. All right. 55's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. An important thing to know is that even if you miss one, say like I had forgotten this one because it was in a sea of red, when I'm done, I'm going to check through all of these again to make sure I didn't miss any. And if I did, I could easily just bring it over and then double check because I left a single line that I could still read my numbers through it. And to finish this up really quick, I would also have 58 and a half, and there's 2 of those, and a 60, and there are 2 of those. And I have a beautiful little frequency table. Now I have some organized information I can actually use. So, here is a line plot. Boom, there's my line. The first thing I want to do is I want to think of a range. And from like 2nd grade, we know a range is from where I start. That's not what I wanted. I didn't want a pen. I wanted this. From where I start to where I finish. So the range is from 50 to 60. But the value of the range is 10 because you take your highest value minus your lowest value. So on this line, I am going to need a range of 10 numbers. And those 10 numbers are going to start with 50 and end with 60. So naturally, I'm thinking, oh yeah, 1's so simple, right? But not yet. I want to take a look at my other numbers. Here I have some whole numbers, but here I have some fractions, and I have some halves. Well, if I have halves, maybe I should throw them in there, right? So, easily represented, because now what we're doing is we're figuring out our interval. It's what we skip count by. And I could say halves, I could also say wholes because I can put an X in between two whole numbers and I could figure out that that's half. Or I could put a line, which I'm going to show you. The one thing I don't want to do is be able to write 50 a million times. So for the sake of this, we are going to make it whole numbers because we could fit it in. I always start with the middle because I like to work my way out. We have 55, 54, 53, 52, 51, 56, 57, 58, 59. Then I would label it 54, 53, 52, 51, 56, 57, 58, 59. That is the hardest part of doing this entire thing, is figuring out your number line and figuring out the interval. Now you might say, well, where are those halves? And maybe I don't want to put them right in between. Maybe I want to show them, but I don't want to label them because how am I going to fit another 54 and a half in between this? It's going to look really sloppy, really messy. So what I could do is just put the line in between. Because even though it's not labeled, we know that a line halfway in between two whole numbers would be a half. So there you go, problem solved. And now it's just a matter of matching your number to the number on the number line and having the right quantity. So at 50, I need two X's. So here we go. 1, 2. Now it's also important to keep them neat, to keep them stacked, and around the same size. Because when I do the next one, I want to my goal is to be able to look across this, and all the 2's I would see just like this. I wouldn't have to go and count each one like 1, come on, cursor, 1, 2, 3. You know, it would be 1, 2, 3, and then I would be able to see all the 3's. So at 50 and a half, we have 6 of them. So 50 and a half, I go 1, 2. Notice you can see the 2 is a 2. And they don't have to be perfect, but they have to be pretty close. 3, 4, 5, 6. 52 has 2. 1, 2. 55 has 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, these are not perfect, but they're close. I could see 6 is 6. 2 is 2. And as you go right more and there's more distance, it's harder to do. You have to look back and gauge it, all right? You got to take your time. Here we go. 58 and a half has 2. 1, 2. And, whoops, Mr. Oldenburg. Look at that. Good thing we have erasers. 58 and a half. Make sure you check your work. You can always make mistakes, but always make sure you're checking. And then 60 has 2. And there we go. We did it. It's done. It's over. It's beautiful. Except we didn't title it. This is the height of students in grade 5. So we need to know what our measurements are. So this is the height of students. And by the way, I would make this a nice horizontal one across the top. In grade 5. And one other thing. See all these numbers down here, 50, 47, whatever. We have to say what they are, because otherwise I could say, what are those? Their ages? I know it says height, but maybe it's measured in feet. That would be crazy. You'd be so tall. So it tells me in inches. So I might write inches at the bottom, because you always need to label your numbers. Without words, your numbers mean nothing. All right, so this was another example, and I did the weight of dogs in pounds. Quick review. Up here is a data table. Everything's not organized. I would find my lowest value, which is 6, after going through it, and I'd start a frequency table. My frequency table, I'd have 6, 7 1/4, 8 1/2, in order. How many times does each occur? Okay. Now, when I go to make my chart, I would start with 6. I don't know why they started with 5. There's no real reason. However, they did put a 13 at the end. I would put that there. If you look, your last value is 12 1/4. 12 1/4 is more than 12, but less than 13. And if we're counting by quarters, which is what this is, it's important to have this here. You should always follow through. This, I don't know why, because there's nothing here. So the first thing we want to do, like I said, you take these numbers in number order. I wouldn't even bother listing it like that. If you're careful and you put the slash through, you can do this right. What I would say is let's take a look at the line chart. So things I want you to notice about this line chart. First of all, I have whole numbers, but then each whole number is sectioned off into pieces. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. So to get from one whole to the other is 4 pieces. Now if I took the reciprocal of that, that means each one of these is worth a quarter. And that would make sense because you have quarter, half, 3/4, whole. Oh my gosh. You're telling me the reciprocal thing came back? Yeah, never left. You used to know you were doing it. So now I know my interval. The distance between each jump is a quarter. I know the range is from 6 to 12 1/4, and I know the value of my range is 6 1/4 because 12 1/4 minus 6 is 6 1/4. And then you plot away like normal. You just find the values. Then they can ask you tons of questions about it. They might say, which one happens the most often? What's the most common weight? And you would probably say 12 1/4 because there are the most amount of pets that are here. Which is the least? Well, it's 7 1/4 and 11 1/2. They both have 1, so you need to list both. You can't choose one or the other. The other thing, this is what question 1's going to ask on the next page. What do each of these dots represent? Each of these dots is a dog. All right, I think we spoke about 1 and 2 already pretty well. So let's take a look at number 3. They want me to draw a line plot to represent this data. First thing I'm going to want to do, same thing as always. Make sure I have a frequency table, which they gave me, which is beautiful. It's one less step. So now, let me think of the range. I'm going from 3 1/2 to 8 1/2. So, my line graph should start at 3 1/2, go to 8 1/2. My measurement is in pounds, so I'm going to put LBS. And then I am doing the pumpkin weight. Now, look at your numbers. I have a half here, I have a quarter here, a whole here, and a half here. I'm going to go with halves as my intervals because I know I can put a quarter in between a half and a whole. And since there's only one of them, it's not going to play that big of a problem. Also, I have to go out 5 different whole numbers. So I want to have room. And if I start crowding it too much, I'm not going to have room to write my numbers. So after 3 1/2, we would have 4, 4 1/2, 5, 5 1/2, 6, 6 1/2, 7, 7 1/2, 8. And then I would fix this because you don't want to leave too much room. Everything should look about the same. Okay. And now it's just charting. I have 3 1/2 pounds, and that's happening 2 times. 3 1/2 pounds, twice. 5 1/4 is in between 5 and 5 1/2. It happens 3 times. Notice my 2's are about the same. You know, they're about the same. Then 7 happens 4 times. Go to 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally 8 1/2 once. And now you could ask tons of questions. Which weight happens the most often? 7. Why? Because most of the pumpkins are 7 pounds. How many pumpkins are less than 7 pounds? Well, here's 7, less than it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many pounds are even weighted? Well, just this one, because 8's the only even number, right? And I don't even know if technically that would work because it's a half. Well, half's an even number. So lots of different questions we could ask. So here they want me to just fill in the line plots. So they give me a data table, or at least a set of data. Now, there's not many numbers here. So since I already created my line and my interval, I can just start plotting these as long as I'm careful. So 11 and a quarter. I have 11 here. Here's 11 and a quarter. I know that because the step I didn't show you was if I start at 10 to get to 11, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps. They're in quarters. So next I have 12 and a half. Here's 12, 2 jumps to a half, 1, 2. Cross it out. 11 and a quarter again, stack it. 14 and 3/4. 10 and a half. 11 and a quarter. And 12. And that's it, as long as you're careful. Now I just need to get rid of it because I need to bring the other one over. Okay, so now we're working with a couple more fractions. Again, they made my chart for me, my line plot. So I have 1, 1 1/8, 1 1/4, 3/8, half. These are measured in eighths because this is 2/8, 3/8, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8/8. Again, they gave it to us, so we're just doing 1 1/8, 2, 1 1/2, 1 1/4, 1 1/8, 1, 2, 1 1/2, 1 1/4. Notice my x's are pretty much in line. They always should be. All right, finally they want me to make one last one. I'm looking at my lowest value. My lowest value is a 0. I'm going to make a frequency table because why not? Not a very big one. So I have 0. My next smallest number, 3/4, is a half, then 3/4, then 1. So 1/2, 3/4, 1. Now let's count how many times they happen. 0 happens once. 1/2, 1, 2, 3. 3/4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2. Now I can plot. I draw my line. It starts at 0, it ends at 1. So my range is 1. So we're all working with numbers less than 1. Decimals, fractions, woohoo, parts of a whole. I look at my numbers. The numbers that I have to plot are half, 3/4, whole. As far as I'm concerned, I would do quarters because even though there's not a 1/4, you can get half in there and you can get 3/4. So halfway between 1 and 0 is a half, a quarter, and 3/4. Let's plot the material. There's 1 0. There are 3 1/2. There are 3 3/4. And there are 2 1/2. Again, they didn't give me a title. They didn't give me a measurement label, so I don't need to put those. But what I do need to realize is that all my x's and the 1 are the same height. And in the same line, all the 2's and the 3's should look higher. All right? Take care. Hope you enjoyed it.